You see, we were told that if you go tell the truth, no matter how it hurts, you will get indemnity. A mother, then I don't know how deep a wound can get.
Let's move to Cape Town for the last evidence by the 5 policemen whose amnesty applications have served before the Truth Commission's amnesty committee in the last 2 weeks. Together, they killed at least 65 people.
Negro does not need a home. He can sleep under a tree.
Under apartheid, black South Africans were treated as less than human. The regime valued the lives of dogs more than the lives of black people. Even on Robben Island and in prisons across the country, guard dogs were fed, housed, and cared for better than the men who dared to demand freedom. The torture endured by black Africans was merciless. They were beaten, starved, humiliated, and psychologically broken. Dogs were unleashed on them as weapons. Innocent civilians, teachers, students, workers, fathers and mothers, not just imprisoned, but in many cases, killed in custody. Their deaths were often covered up as accidents, while their families were left in silence and grief. And yet here lies the painful truth. The perpetrators of these crimes, the wardens, the guards, the police, the officials, were almost never prosecuted. They walked away untouched, blending into society as ordinary citizens, many still enjoying privilege in the country they once brutalized. Meanwhile, the survivors and families of those killed continue to carry the scars that South Africa has yet to heal. This is not just history. It is living injustice that still casts a shadow over South Africa today. Most people know Nelson Mandela as the symbol of resistance against apartheid. But fewer know about the man Mandela himself, called the greatest leader of them all, Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe. While Mandela endured decades in prison, Sobukwe was subjected to a unique form of torment, isolation, silence, and deliberate psychological torture. On Robben Island, prison guards as young as 18 to 21 were ordered to dehumanize him. And the methods they used were so cruel that they are now banned under international law. Today, we uncovered the forgotten story of Sobukwe's suffering and why the apartheid regime feared him more than anyone else. Robert Sobukwe was the founder of the Pan Africanist Congress. Unlike Mandela's ANC, Sobukwe's vision was even more radical. A South Africa truly owned by Africans, free from white supremacy and colonial structures. In 1960, he led the famous anti-apartheid protests.
Like the African people all over the continent are marching to the beat of the drums of history. It will be remembered that 16 years ago, under the leadership of the Pan Africanist Congress of Tanzania, the people launched what is known today as the Sharpeville campaign, where 69 people were shot dead and 184 were wounded. by the police bullets. The 20th of March, I saw police whom I have never seen. From Springs, from Jamestown, from all over. They were coming in like this. It was a convoy, from all over to see what is happening in Sharpeville. I said, no, the struggle is on now. It's really on. And it was on.
Acts of defiance against the oppressive past laws that controlled the movement of black South Africans. The Sharpeville massacre followed, where police opened fire, killing 69 protesters. Sobukwe was arrested, but instead of serving a normal sentence, the apartheid government invented a special clause, the Sobukwe clause, which allowed them to keep him in prison indefinitely, without trial, without charges. That's how dangerous they thought his ideas were. Unlike Mandela, who was at least allowed contact with other prisoners, Sobukwe was placed in total solitary confinement. Imagine this, a small cell, silence, and only young prison guards, barely adults themselves, ordered to humiliate, harass, and torment him daily. The methods were brutal by design, and also were designed to leave no physical scars. He was denied newspapers, letters, and even books to keep his mind starved. Guards mocked him, isolated him, and sometimes left him without food for long periods of time. Medical care was intentionally withheld. Sobukwe developed severe respiratory problems and tuberculosis symptoms. In a cold cell without insulation and one blanket.
One of the things that is difficult for me to comprehend is that we spent such a long time here. And there were moments of joy. But of course, there were painful moments because the apartheid regime was an expert in persecuting people psychologically.
This wasn't just imprisonment, it was psychological warfare. The regime knew that silence and isolation could break a man more effectively than chains, and it worked. By the time Sobukwe was finally released, his health, both physical and mental, had been permanently damaged. One of the most chilling tactics used against Sobukwe was the interception of his letters. Any communication from home, from his wife Veronica, his children, or his comrades, was deliberately blocked or destroyed. Guards sometimes went even further, telling him cruel lies, like his family had abandoned him, or even that his loved ones had died. For a man already trapped in complete isolation, this psychological trauma cut deeper than any physical pain. It was designed to break his spirit by severing the only lifeline he had left: human connection. This needs to be stated. On Robben Island, brutality wasn't limited to just isolation or lies. Prison guards unleashed dogs on prisoners, using them as weapons of intimidation, tearing at men who were unarmed, shackled, and utterly defenseless. It's also important to remember that these were not criminals. They were innocent civilians whose only crime was demanding dignity and freedom in their own land. The apartheid regime treated justice seekers as enemies of the state, using violence and terror and even murder to crush the very idea of black equality on their own land.
Changes which are to come can only come as a result of a program worked out by black people. And for black people to be able to work out a program, they need to defeat the one main element in politics which was working against them, and this was a psychological feeling of inferiority.
Robert Sobukwe was released in 1969 after 9 years of torture. He was a shadow of himself. Years of isolation had wrecked his mental health. After this, he struggled with depression, paranoia, and had long bouts of silence. Physically, his lungs were damaged beyond repair. Doctors suspected the prison deliberately delayed treatment, accelerating his decline. He developed lung cancer, but the government refused to allow him to leave South Africa for proper medical care. By the time he died in 1978, he was only 53 years old. The apartheid regime had succeeded in silencing him, not just in prison, but in memory. His voice, his vision, his brilliance, erased through systematic torture. These dehumanizing methods used on Robert Sobukwe, solitary confinement for extended periods, deliberate medical neglect, psychological humiliation, are now recognized as forms of extreme torture under international law. Today, the United Nations Convention Against Torture explicitly bans prolonged solitary confinement.
I lost my childhood. I lost my happiness. I don't really tell too much people about this, but it's like sometimes I talk to myself, and it's like it's actually embarrassing. Sometimes on the train or the bus, I have a whole conversation with myself for 5 to 10 minutes, and then it's like you're really crazy. Like you really talk to yourself.
Okay, you attempted suicide 5 to 6 times.
Yes.
While still in prison.
Yes.
Wow.
And I tried to resort to telling the correction officers that I wanted to see a psychiatrist or a counselor, something. I was telling them I need mental help because I wasn't feeling right. All the stress from my case, everything was just getting to me, and I just couldn't take it. I just needed somebody to talk to. I needed to just I just needed to talk and be stress-free.
Calling it inhumane and degrading. Studies show that more than 15 days, he was kept 9 years, but more than 15 days in isolation causes irreversible psychological harm. Sobukwe endured it for years under the apartheid regime. Globally, these practices have been outlawed because they don't just punish the body, they destroy the mind. And Sobukwe's suffering remains one of the clearest examples of why such human rights protections are necessary. A few days ago, on X, someone left a comment under a post about South Africa today and how the ANC is failing. And they said, apartheid was better. Apartheid was better for who? The apartheid system was built on human rights violations. Passed laws that turned black South Africans in their own country into foreigners. Forced removals from their own land that destroyed entire communities. Censorship, torture, imprisonment without trial, and assassinations of activists. Sobukwe's story was not unique. It was a reflection of a system designed to break every voice of dissent. But the special cruelty of this treatment shows how terrified the apartheid regime was of his ideas of true African self-determination. Robert Sobukwe was not a criminal. He was an innocent civilian, a man of conscience who dared to tell the truth in a country built on lies. For that, he was tortured, silenced, and broken by a regime that feared the power of his vision. In the long corridors of history, Sobukwe will always stand on the right side. His struggle for dignity, for freedom, for the belief that South Africa could belong equally to all who live in it. And for that, he deserves more than silence. He deserves to be exalted, not just by Black South Africans, but by white South Africans too, because his fight was ultimately for humanity itself. To forget Sobukwe is to accept the injustice done to him. To remember him is to honor the truth that no regime, no torture, no prison walls can erase. Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe belongs not in the footnotes of history, but in its spotlight, as a giant of resistance, a martyr of truth, and a symbol of what it means to stand unflinchingly for justice. Robert Sobukwe didn't just die from cancer. He died from the slow, calculated violence of the apartheid regime. His torture was designed not only to kill the man, but to erase his legacy. Yet today, telling his story is a form of resistance. It reminds us why human rights protections exist and why the world must never allow such human rights abuses to happen again. Sobukwe once said, "There's only one race, the human race," and his words live on, even though the regime tried to silence him. If you believe Robert Sobukwe's story deserves to be told, remembered, and honored, then let's make sure his name is never forgotten. Drop your thoughts in the comments section. Do you think Robert Sobukwe has been erased too easily from South African history? Hit that like button if this video gave you new perspectives. Share it with someone who needs to know the truth, and subscribe to this channel for more untold stories of Africa's past and present. Together, we can keep Sobukwe's legacy alive.
I have spent a long time in prison and wasted away the most productive years of my life. Those conditions would make any man very bitter and his heart to be full of hate. There was a lot of cruelty which was practiced on myself and my colleagues. There were assaults. I was never assaulted. You must also understand that the warders who worked with us are themselves workers, are themselves human beings with problems, who are also exploited, the victims of the system. And one of our objectives was to ensure that we improve the relations between ourselves and these warders, help them in their own problems. And in that way, you forget about anything that is negative, like hate. You are dealing with human beings and you want to live in peace with these people. You want them also to go and spread the same message to their own people as we want to spread to our own people. And in that situation, it's very difficult to find room for hate.